Know this feeling of wanting to make a transition in your life, but not knowing exactly how to do it? Or that sense of insecurity you get when thinking about retirement and how it's going to look, even if it's decades away? Well, I think Judaism has a response for this. Shmita, the sabbatical year, that cycle of 7 years of regeneration that we have in our tradition. And I want to tell you how I got to this. I did not grow up like this, meaning an observant Jew. I grew up in Israel, in a secular family, and spent most of my youth in learning and activism around social, economic, and environmental issues. Not knowing too much about my Jewish heritage, except for the fact I speak Hebrew. One day, when I was 16, today I'm 34, I got an email from a non-Jewish American friend telling me that he's very envious of me for knowing Hebrew, because it means I can read all those books, like the Talmud and the Zohar, which I never read, of course. But his interest sparked my interest. And I started learning those books, looking to see if they can somehow inform the social and economic issues I was so deeply invested in. So to cut a long story short, it took me 7 years, and I ended up like this, with a kippah and a beard and those funny fringes that we have. And here are my conclusions. So conclusion number 1, beware of Jewish literature, because this can happen to you as well. Conclusion number 2, not only Judaism does have a lot to say about big social and economic issues, it actually has many deep and profound things to say about those issues. Like the same way, it has many deep and profound things to say about our innermost familial and communal issues. And the wonderful thing is that it does all that using the same set of concepts and ideas. Now, this cohesiveness completely blew my mind. And the single most important idea that had the deepest impact on me, for its cohesiveness, for its profound wisdom, was Shmita. Now, I believe that when the time for an idea has come, it simply pops up in people's minds independently. Perhaps it's mystical, perhaps it's sociological, I don't know. What I do know is that this is exactly what happened with Shmita. When a few years ago, towards the Shmita year of Tafshin Ayin Hey, that was 2014-15, after being neglected for millennia, Shmita became all of a sudden the hottest topic among Jewish organizations, like Hazon and ROI and many other organizations. We started a conversation around how can we apply Shmita into our modern life, into modern economy, modern society. It is a very nascent conversation, and there are way more questions than answers. And I'm here simply to invite you to join this conversation. So what is Shmita? Shmita occurs every 7 years, and it literally means to let go. To let go of the cycle that is ending and embrace the next cycle, which is now beginning. And it marks some very significant cycles that we have. First and foremost, it marks the agricultural cycle, when all farmers leave the land fallow for a year so it can regenerate towards the next cycle of production. It marks the labor and financial cycles, when all loans are forgiven and when all slaves are set free in the Jubilee year, which is the 50th year, after 7 cycles of Shmita. And it marks the national cycle with the commandment of Hakhel, from the word Kehila, community, that brings once every 7 years everybody, including everybody, to Jerusalem to read together the Torah, and to reaffirm our commitment to our shared past and our shared destiny. Rav Kook, who was the first chief rabbi of Israel in the 1920s, and who defined the way Shmita is being observed by farmers in Israel to this day, said that Shmita does to the nation what Shabbat does for the individual. However, how can we achieve this when only a handful of us work as farmers, or where we don't own slaves that we can release? In order to start answering this question, we need to understand Shmita itself a bit better. And the best way to do it would be using a metaphor. And the best metaphor for this would be life itself. So bear with me for a moment as we take a quick journey inside ourselves. So in the past, people used to think that what makes the difference between living creatures like us and the unanimated world around us is some sort of vital matter, some magic powder that makes us come to life. Today we know that's not true. We know that me, you, the chairs you're sitting on, are all made of the exact same building blocks. And the only thing that makes a difference is how those building blocks are organized. However, we are not completely organized. In fact, our body constantly gravitates towards disorder, chaos, entropy, death. What keeps us alive is a set of constraints and cycles of rejuvenation that maintain the balance between chaos and order. What we get at the end is what we Israelis call balagan meurgan, organized chaos. Now, Israel is good at that. Now, we need those cycles of rejuvenation not only on the biological level. We also need them on the emotional level, social level, national level. And Shmita can be the mechanism that enables us to do this. It can be the tool that enables us to rearrange our lives on the individual level. It can help our communities create a sense of communal heartbeat, a time to counterbalance entropic processes within it. And it might even have the potential to somehow minimize the severe consequences of economic meltdowns, like the ones we had in 2001, the dot-com bubble, then 2008, then 2015 in the Far East. By the way, we have those on average every 7 years. Because if you inject pre-planned and controlled shocks into the system, it might alleviate to some extent the impact of uncontrolled and unplanned shocks into the system. Recent studies predict that people my age and younger, aka millennials, are going to have to switch anything between 9 to 18 jobs by the time we retire. Now that's great news on the one hand. Lots of innovation, many opportunities to reinvent ourselves. You know, millennials love this, to reinvent ourselves all the time. But this also means a huge burden on the individual that will have to adapt and readapt over and over again. Shmita suggests that we take certain break periods to reassess our skills, rethink our purpose, re-examine the opportunities around us, and make a safe transition to the next phase. Now, this is not about some crazy long vacation that brings you to the same point from which you left at the end. This is about making transitions in life in a thoughtful and responsible manner. Now, furthermore, this is not only about the individual. This can actually have some significant macroeconomic implications, because what happens right now is that we lose more and more talented people who get kicked out of the workforce just because they missed the train to the next station. We don't need the government to artificially sustain outdated industries to resolve this. What we need is the time and space to make the transition. Now, this conflates with another challenge that we now face, which we mentioned in the beginning, the retirement system. Do you know there are probably more people in America who believe that we are constantly being visited by UFOs than people who believe that the social security system is going to support them? Now, that's a global issue, not an American issue. And the reason is that when Otto von Bismarck invented the retirement system in 19th century Germany, he ruled that the retirement age would be 65, because the average life expectancy was also 65. Now, that was very clever of him. Today, we'll live 15 to 20 years longer than that, Baruch Hashem. And still, we retire at the same age set back in 19th century Germany. And we do this in a generation that considers last year's iPhone an archaeological relic. Now that's completely crazy. So what if we take the concept of Shmita and apply it in a way that remodels the retirement system to actually fund and enable those break periods that we need to take. And then, since most of us can hold on to our non-physically demanding jobs even after 65, we can simply extend our retirement to make up for that. Now, Shmita has many more aspects. For example, what would it mean to abolish slavery in the 21st century? Shmita was actually the first documented call in human history for the abolition of slavery. And we've made some progress since then, but there's still work to be done. And how would Hakhel look like in our generation? How would this national gathering can look like? And how can our food system benefit from applying the agricultural cycle of 7 years? Now, some of these ideas may seem delusional. I get that. But so was monotheism some 4,000 years ago, and many other key Jewish ideas that eventually shaped the world in which we live. Shabbat, for example, was a completely bizarre idea. Jews were actually condemned as a lazy people for keeping it. And today our civilization enjoys not only one, but actually 2 days of rest, all inspired by the Jewish Shabbat. Even Shmita is being observed to some extent globally in the form of the academic sabbaticals. So maybe, just maybe, a few decades down the line, Shmita can become a self-evident part of our society and our economy. Now, by the time that happens, or actually to make it happen, let's start small. Let's start with ourselves, with our families, with our communities. In the previous Shmita cycle, people came out with all different kinds of creative ideas. Some people took a 2-week symbolic sabbatical. Other people decided to dedicate more time to be with their families, or to learn something new, or to connect different parts of the Jewish people. There was a guy in Jerusalem who works as an engineer for Cisco who decided to take time in the Shmita year just to review all of the tech innovations from the past 6 years and absorb them. The Israeli government, by the way, passed a law that year that certain types of loans will be forgiven for people who cannot pay them back. Now that was a beginning. And now is the time to start thinking and preparing for the next Shmita year of Tafshin Pei Bet. That's 2021, 2022. So I invite myself to ask, what do I want to let go of? What would it mean for me to make a transition in my life? 18 years ago, I got an email that sent me on a lifelong journey, which I'm still taking. But if there is one thing I learned up to this point, is that sometimes the answers we give to our innermost questions can pave the way to answers to the biggest questions out there. Thank you.